warped parts, broken prints, Canadian 3D printing, and Magigoo all over the damn place. All this and more, Print Fail Friday, episode 14, where failure is always an option. Let's get into it. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited for these, and if you are too, make sure you leave a like. But let's jump into this first one, a fan submission from local maker MI, my first painted in-canvas full-color print failure. A broken splice was the cause. I'm probably fixing it by doubling the size. Thanks for the fan submission. You didn't even let me guess. But yeah, broken splices can be common in the palette system. For those that don't know the palette system, it is made by a company called Mosaic. It basically cuts and splices filament together to create multicolor 3D prints. It's actually pretty darn cool, if I do say so myself. But a downside, and you can clearly see it here, is the size of the purge block. That's actually the downside to a lot of single nozzle, multi-material, or multicolor 3D printing in the FDM space. The purge blocks are something that people don't talk about. So if anything, the fail is the purge block, because boy, that's a little tiny part. And I think that doubling the size of the part would not really increase that purge block any larger, and you might actually be able to do the wipe to infill to at least slowly try to remove some of that purge block. Even on the multi-material unit MMU from Prusa, it is a pain. Just like my segue to our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. At 3D Musketeers, we strive to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. Whether you are an inventor that is just starting out that needs their handheld, or you got a broken printer and you got to get some parts made to get it up and running again, we can help you any size that you might be. Whether it's a one-off part or a short production run, we have the capabilities to grow with you so you can make awesome. If you want to learn more about 3D Musketeers, you can do so by clicking the links down in that description. And hey, while you're down there, don't forget to get subscribed. And if you want, head over to patreon.com/3D Musketeers, where you can support the efforts of this channel directly by kicking us a couple of bucks every single month with various perks, some of which are quite a bit of fun. Go take a look. But anyways, let's get back to the fails. We got one here from Mr. Chris Riley, president and CEO of Chris's Basement, a great YouTube channel. If you don't know about it, why don't you know about it? Go find yourself out. Some of Chris's Basement is pretty great. We'll link it down in that description. But this is a fail. Like, this is a fail to say the least. Let's watch. Oh, this just hurts me. It hurts me so much. It hurts so much. Also, is that a Pinda probe? I'd love to put a Pinda probe on one of our machines that doesn't have it. That'd be kind of cool. But, good lord, we got a volcano. And we've got some broken parts. And we've got a print warped. What I'm guessing happened here, and Chris is a very smart guy, he does not need my help, but if you find yourself in this situation, this is what I would look at. One, how did it first occur? Most likely, we had a bit of a peel up that was left unattended, and it got worse. The nozzle kept catching it, making it worse and worse and worse, to the point where it came up so much that it ended up actually physically removing parts from this printer. Now, from what we can see, this is actually the cooling duct for the 3D printer, and we've got the nuts for the Pinda probe, which is kind of interesting to see that off the machine. But yeah, the entire fan for this printer is no longer attached. Definitely would be a bad thing to come back to, and it looks like it skipped some steps because the nozzle's generally right above here, and that is not above the rest of the print. So really interesting to see fails like this, because I mean, this is clearly I left my printer unattended and, you know, it borked itself, levels of fail. But it totally happens. A great way to solve this is to look at using some sort of bed prep material. Looks like Chris has got some sort of a flex bed on there, but hey, making sure that the bed is clean, that if you're adding any adhesion promoters, that they're on there. We're going to take a look at one of those just next. But we want to verify that that first layer goes down well. Look, I know that we all say don't print unattended, but printing unattended is kind of a necessity in this industry, especially for prints that take a long time. We have a video coming up next week that's going to try to solve some of those problems, as well as give you some tips for buying for 3D printing geeks or other maker geeks out there. So get subscribed if you guys want to see that. But making sure that first layer goes down is incredibly important, because if there's anything wrong with it, it can and likely will result in further issues throughout that print. And nobody wants to come back to a big plate of mom's spaghetti. They don't want to come back to broken parts being dragged around their printer. And thankfully, he found this relatively early on in this print, because this would likely continue to cause damage by cutting motor wires, cutting sensor wires, potentially sending failed parts to get embedded into the print. It's just, there's no way this ends well if this was left unattended for a long period of time. But a great, easy, quick way, I'll give you guys the trick here. Use a Wise Cam and a smart plug. If for some reason you're looking at it via the app for Wise and the printer's screwed up, kill the power to the printer. And then turn it back on. 10, 15 seconds later, turn it back on. If the printer has power resume, it's going to ask you if you want to resume. And at that same time, likely wait with all of its heaters off. Don't just shut off your printer when you see something like this. What will happen is the filament will slowly cool in the hot end and potentially clog it. So be careful about that one. But yeah, get comfortable with your machines before you run them unattended. This happens. I'm not gonna blame Chris here for being negligent. This happens to everybody, but knowing how to deal with it is great. And, well, when you're a content creator, the first step is to grab your phone, grab a camera, take some photos and video, and then fix the problem. So, A+, Chris. And speaking of bed adhesion, we take a look at another awesome submission from Shory Designs. And if you want to learn all about Mr. Shory himself, he's going to be our guest on the podcast tomorrow. So make sure you guys get tuned in for that. We're going to be talking all about 3D printing on fabric, and I'm really, really excited to talk with Mr. Shory. But this is such a bummer. I have done this myself, and it's actually why I don't use those tiny tubes of Magigoo anymore. If you squeeze them a little bit too hard, they pop, the top pops off, and all of that Magigoo goes all over your bed. And there's not really a good way to fix that. But you know, that's a pretty cheap fail when it comes to lessons learned. And with Shory being as smart as he is, it's pretty simple to go ahead and just make a new container for it, or just reach out to Magigoo. I bet they'd hook it up. But that's such a bummer, dude. I've been there too. I've ruined more bottles of Magigoo than I care to admit from that design. I like something that's a little bit easier to apply. I know why they did this. It's simple and it's effective. But if you're a little bit of a bull in a china shop there, you're going to have a bad time. No real easy way to avoid this other than just don't squeeze the bottle too darn tight. You could also look at somehow gluing the container shut, or adding some sort of 3D printed adapter ring that would screw on when the cap came off to keep the lid on. But that seems like a little bit more work than it's worth. But be careful about this. Absolutely a trap for the young gamers there. So keep an eye out. Next up, we got something from my buddy QC Fabrication. Hopefully I say that right. This is an awesome model from Photosmint, pre-supported by the lovely Charles Zook, aka Idle Hams. And a beautiful part, but he's gone Canadian. That's a South Park joke for those of you that don't get that.
Don't give me that fat cat fancy lip wiggling!
But what's happened here is it seems like the Peel forces have gotten the better of Darth Maul here, and he's looking a little bit worse for wear. A couple of other things. This could be overexposure or underexposure, creating too much pressure on the Peel force. But this is a larger resin 3D printer, and if this model was scaled up a fair bit, the drain holes may not be adequate, and it might actually be creating some suction force, which can cause the model to separate like that. Now, this is more common in the water washable resins, and I even asked about this, understanding that we were going to include this in a PrintFailFriday, but they're using this JAMGHE Conjure Rigid resin, and I've never personally used this stuff before, so kind of use at your own risk, but, you know, I'm sure it's fine. Personally, I'm a Soraya Tech fanboy, and I've always been a Soraya Tech fanboy, at least since I started using their products. I mean, that's just my personal feeling there. But in terms of fixing this, you gotta run a calibration, whether using the Amerilabs test print or some of the other exposure tests that are out there, to verify that you're not overexposing or underexposing. For certain prints, you might want to overexpose, whereas others you might want to get closer to that sweet spot. So if you're overexposing a little bit, that peel force can be quite a bit higher, causing damage like this. Now, we don't see any peeling from the actual plate itself, and it looks like all the support has clearly grabbed a hold of that model. So if your support doesn't fail, if your build plate adhesion doesn't fail, and you've got too much suction force, what has to fail? It's the layer. Now, we could have had part of the layer get stuck to the FEP for a little bit, and then eventually it somehow bonded and pulled itself off. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that one, but this is, generally speaking, a peel force problem. Now, what is curious about this is that the side of the hood over here is totally fine. It looks great, but we can see that the damage appears to get greater as we get to the side of the model. So I'm not 100% sure. I'm still leaning toward it's a peel force problem. Now, this has never been, like, fully confirmed or debunked, but we do this, and we've done it ever since, I think it was Uncle Jesse first published the video. We put some 3-in-1 PTFE lubricant on all of our vats. A lot of people say it doesn't do anything. Well, I think it works, and if it doesn't do anything, it's probably not going to hurt either. We believe that this helps that peel force come off quite a bit easier, but that's just my opinion. And for $4 for a bottle, it was cheap enough to try. I've never had any detrimental side effects that I can tell, so I've never bothered to change the method. It seems to work well for us. But otherwise, the print looks really good. Bummer to see that fail, and unfortunately with resin printers like this, and I've talked about this before, that having a clear tank would be really cool, so we could see fails like this before they get really bad. But hey, is what it is. Resin is thankfully not all that expensive, and this print is, you know, 10 or 15 bucks down the drain. However, it does look like the base printed just fine, so it's not all in vain. Although this would give you a really cool opportunity to break the rest of the head and make some sort of diorama piece where Darth Maul's getting hit with a saber. So, just gonna put that one out there. Some food for thought, if you will. Quick tip: for a higher chance of the print finishing successfully, ensure the nozzle is torqued correctly and does not fall out of the hot end during the print. Make sure to subscribe for more obvious tips like hot things are hot, A-nets can be used as a fire starter in an emergency. That's a bad joke, but I kind of love it. This one is from Nero3D. Nero's another content creator as well, so go give him the credit they deserve. Just like Kiersey, go give everyone the credit they deserve, please. Let's take a look at this video. This video is interesting. Looking fine. The dragon, everybody. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the nozzle, but what we get to see is big lines of filament, which means, yeah, the nozzle physically came undone during a print. I can't say that I've ever had this happen. What I have had happen is a nozzle break in the middle of a print for no apparent reason. It was the stock nozzle that my Lulzbot Taz 6 came with, and in the middle of a print, it randomly just sheared. It broke off and fell and melted into the part. It took me longer than I cared to admit to figure this one out. But torquing your nozzle properly is incredibly important, like crazy important, and especially to do it under temperature. Now, Nero's a reasonably smart individual. I have faith that they did torque this down, and maybe over time of running what I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a Voron 2.4 at likely breakneck speeds, as the Voron guys like to do, it might have jostled itself loose. Now, I don't know what hot end is in this. I know commonly they're the Phaetus Dragons, and I don't have any personal experience with the company Phaetus in general. I would love to get some of their hot ends. We should probably reach out to them to get some review units. If you or anyone that you know has contacts over there, hit me up. I'd love to compare them to some of the other hot ends on the market for both fit, finish, design, and functionality, and probably use the Wham Bam Mutant as the platform to take everything on and off. It's probably just going to be a whole lot easier to do it that way. But yeah, this one's a bummer. I mean, there's really no good way to stop this from occurring other than checking your nozzles, but realistically, if it's properly torqued from the factory or properly torqued from the beginning, you shouldn't necessarily have this problem. But as the Voron guys do, and I'm gonna throw a little shade here real quick, when you modify your printers a lot, especially when you're building printers from scratch, you have to make sure that you go back about a month after you've built it and really kind of ran it in, if you will, to make sure that everything is still tight, especially anything that involves screwing into plastic or where you're squeezing plastic in a compression scenario. The plastic will have a tendency to loosen itself over time because it's plastic and it's not solid, right? It can move. So, bit of a bummer for this one, but ended up turning out to be a pretty interesting little time lapse there. So, you know, can't hate it. And hey, 3.6 thousand views on a Twitter video, I'll take it. And yes, those dragons, they're great. Magigoo made such a great model. We'll link to it in the description as well if you guys want to get that model. It's like less than $5, and I think it's a great torture test for 3D prints. My personal opinion. And last but certainly not least, a recent failure from my archive of fails. This is a big FDM part on our Fusion 3 F410. You can actually see the step ladder is still out, so we can get up to the printer, which is up there. And I will say, a step ladder with a bad back, not a lot of fun. But I was trying out a brand new set of settings in Precisizer 2.4 with ABS. And as you can see, it did not work. We had some serious warping. We can actually see right where the warping started. It started right at that line. Now, I understand the print's not all that clean. I'm running incredibly fast. Perimeters at 175 millimeters a second. Infill at 175 millimeters a second. External perimeters are like 25 to try to get a good, clean surface. But this printer does have like an 800 millimeter long Bowden tube. And part of our goal with all the Capricorn testing we're doing right now is to potentially switch this machine over to Capricorn and Cap Tube, which is pretty great. We're going to go through this in an upcoming video, so really excited for that. But to look at it, exchanging it and seeing if we can deal with the back pressure issue that we have. So this machine does have a fully enclosed chamber, and it does have a vented chamber. Now, you can see back here, I actually disabled the internal fan. It's got a plug style system that you could easily pull out. So that's what I did to keep any cool air from coming in as it was exhausting that hot ABS air. But I don't know if the balmy temperatures here in Florida might have caused my air conditioning to kick on, and that might have cooled the ambient air inside the machine, or what happened here. But I looked back and it wasn't happy. So unfortunately, that's like 3 hours worth of printing. The part is 340 millimeters wide, and when it failed, it was about 50% of the way done. And it's at about 100 millimeters tall in this scenario. The entire part is a little over 200 millimeters, and clearly it was not going to work. And when you're doing parts for clients, this kind of thing is not acceptable. Any amount of warp, even on big parts like this, we scrap it. Thankfully, this is ABS, so there is an easy way to recycle all of it. But we were just messing around to see if we could get ABS to print big parts without warping, and no, we couldn't. Even with some really big 0.4 millimeter thick ears on the 3 corners that exist on this part. So, hey, you live and you learn. We normally print these parts at a PETG, but I'm trying to make this machine faster by using a material with a lower viscosity. PETG is 1.24 to 1.27 grams per cubic centimeter, whereas ABS is around 1.08. It is considerably less dense, therefore considerably less viscous, and much, much easier to 3D print. So, we were able to print faster, but it did come at the cost of warping. And that's why we do prefer PETG for parts like this, or even PLA in some instances, because, well, those two materials are much less prone to warping and considerably easier when you look at big prints like this. Now, if we did have a fully heated chamber, we might have been able to stave this off, but because we're relying just on the heated bed of the printer itself, it's pretty much a fool's errand. Now, we are working on a way to solve this problem in this machine and other machines, so when we're ready to announce it to the public, I will make sure that you guys get to know first right here on the 3D Musketeers YouTube channel, so stay tuned. I'm hoping to have it in Q1 of 2022, our first marketable product. So, anyways, guys, that's really all I got. I'd love to know, especially on this one, because it's a personal failure. Other than, like, putting a raft, I'm not exactly certain what we could have done to solve this problem. I just think that this part being thin and large is really working against us for ABS. I will say the variable layer heights, you can actually see a little bit of that. We were playing around with variable layer heights. It seems to actually work quite well, so A+ for that. I've never tried variable layer height on this large machine. But yeah, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts down in those comments. That's really all I got for you today. Make sure you get subscribed for the next episode of Print Fail Friday, which will be coming in a week. And that'll be the holiday special. Maybe we'll do that one as a comedy special. That might be fun. Yeah, let's do next week, number 15 as a comedy special. That might be fun. Anyways, stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones, especially in this holiday season. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. And last but certainly not... Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. Victoria is bristling with excitement to thank our patrons, as am I, whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier or higher. If you want to support this channel directly and get your name in our end credits, you can do so at patreon.com/3dmusketeers. But before you do that, make sure you leave a like and get subscribed for more awesome content coming at you right here on the 3D Musketeers YouTube channel. And yes, that does include the final episode in the Sanjay series coming next week. We will be releasing a slightly edited full-length video as well, and that will go up to our Patreon supporters a week before it goes up to YouTube. Anyways, right below me is going to be the entire Print Fail Friday series, so if you want to see the other 13 videos that we've done, or more, depending on when you're watching this one, you can do so right below me. And next to that will be our Ender 3 upgrade series, where just this past Wednesday, we did an Ender 3 Pro extruder upgrade in less than 30 minutes, and you can too. I will see you guys down in those comments, and in the next one, take care.